in terms of that, just once again, I'm Alex Scott. I'm the branch secretary of Together Queensland. I'll be the initial panelist for today's session. And in terms of this process, we will be running the Zoom, trying to keep it to half an hour with all our public sector Zooms to make sure that people have an opportunity to participate, but also to be able to go on with the other work during the day. And the session also today will be being videoed and available on the website once it's been able to be uploaded. But before we start today, I just wanted to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we're meeting across the state today and pay my respects to their elders past and present and emerging. Today, what we are doing is another session in relation to Together's campaigns around climate action and trying to look at how we can build community support for real action in relation to climate change, which has been a significant issue for a number of our members and clearly an issue for future generations. And we're lucky to be joined by Dave Copeman today, who is the Director of the Queensland Conservation Council, to talk about the campaign that Together wants to work with them on and talk about how we can provide real opportunities to make a significant difference in terms of the debate about climate. But I will hand over to Dave now with the presentation, and then we'll talk a little bit after that about what we can all do as Together members to start building real pressure for real action on climate change. So Dave, I'll hand over to you.
Yeah, thanks very much, Alex. G'day, everyone. I'm Dave Copeman, as Alex said, the Director of the Queensland Conservation Council. With me also is Kat Fry, who's the Climate Mobiliser at QCC. And we're both really happy to be here today. I don't know if you want to say g'day, Kat.
Yes, hello. I actually used to be in the Together Union, so it's great that you guys are going to kick this off. That's awesome.
Yeah, and I'm a member of your fellow ASU branch. I'm in the services branch. I'm really grateful to speak about this. This is obviously a critical issue. Many of you would have seen the IPCC reports that tells us that the Australian landscape has increased its temperature 1.4 degrees, and over the next 60 to 80 years, we will see an increase of another 1 to 3.5 degrees, depending upon how strong an action we take around climate. So this is obviously a really serious thing and something that we care about deeply. We also know that Australia actually has huge potential to reduce global emissions because we are one of the highest per capita emitters in the world. And here in Queensland, we're 31% of Australia's emissions. So right here, right now, if we can shift people's attitudes around the potentials and the opportunities that come from us in reducing carbon emissions, we're potentially some of the most powerful people in Australia, which makes us per capita some of the most powerful people in the world to be able to put us on a better trajectory as a global challenge we all face. And so obviously for 30 years or more, the climate movement, environment movement and unions have been struggling to work out how do we escalate action. One of the things that was coming up in discussions in the last couple of years was that research was showing us that, like probably everyone on this call who's animated and concerned about this, the debate just seems to be between those people who are really alarmed and worried about it and climate skeptics and denialists, and it's happening in social media, and it's just two groups kind of yelling at each other. And actually the problem we're facing with that in the social media world is that the middle ground are tuning out. And then the polls show us overwhelming that Queenslanders are concerned around climate change, that they know that it's going to have impact on them, that they want to see actions. But while they see it as a divide at extremes, we're not seeing that shift to it really putting pressure on our politicians of all flavours. And so one of the things we came up with was just a simple tactic. How can we make it seem visible, make visible this concern that people have? And how can we make it normal that people can say, yeah, I'm concerned about climate, I'm concerned about my kids' futures. So out of this discussion, we basically said, right, we need to get signs up on people's houses, on people's streets. It needs to not be, one sign of the most active person on the street putting up a big thing like an election call flute, like we often see. We need it to become ubiquitous. So everyone's doing that. So I might just share my screen and walk us through a quick presentation, if that's all right. These are the signs that we designed. They're really simple. They're deliberately branded to not have a logo on them. They just have a QR code because COVID has taught us all how to use QR codes. And the idea is this is what the guys whose houses were burnt down during the bushfires painted on their water tanks and on their satellite dishes when the rest of the place burnt. And we just thought it was a really simple, effective message. Obviously, there's a range of different actions that we need to have occur, but the challenge we have is that there's different demands at a state level, at a federal level. There's different things that we can expect of a future Labor government than we can expect from Angus Taylor and Scott Morrison. And so we just thought, rather than getting into a particular target or a particular issue, we just need to demonstrate the power and concern of the movement. And so that's what this sign is for. And we've started distributing them. We've printed, actually it's with the help of fellow union, United Workers Union, we've been printing off thousands of these signs and stickers. We've been distributing them and we're trialing it as a tactic. And what we're finding is we're getting really high uptake rates. People are really keen to take a sign. They're really keen to share it. It's a relatively easy thing to ask people, hey, would you put this up? This up here, I don't know if you can see my cursor, is my son and his next door neighbour. And there's signs all over my suburb of Fairfield because they just set up a stall outside their house. We're distributing at the moment across mainly Southeast Queensland, because the goal is, while the last federal election, there was all this reaction around, you know, the swings that we saw in the areas between Townsville and maybe Bundaberg, there's lots and lots of people in the Southeast who are just as concerned, but somehow the dominant discourse within the media narrative around Queensland is not picking that up. So we want to get these out everywhere. We want them on bins, we want them on the backs of cars, we want them in workplaces. And we want them up there for a while so that politicians are seeing them, but also so we shift the community attitude. So if everyone in your street or half your street has got one up, it kind of makes it more acceptable for people to talk about climate or to realise that other people care about it. So this is our plan. Thousands of signs up in Southeast Queensland before the federal election. And we want to get to the point where we're getting half a street where someone's got to sign up. We really want to build community connection and build simple conversations that people can have around, you know, this is why I care about climate. And so we're setting up volunteer networks. Particularly, we're starting in the area of the Ryan federal electorate because it's an area where we know people care about this, but also because we wanted to build a whole bunch of density and energy in one area. And so that instead of it being, you know, posting them out to people, or only the most active who are willing to come into an office and pick them up or pay to have them posted to them, we wanted to get real density and momentum with lots of people. And so we want to utilise neighbourhood centres, churches, cafes, a range of places to distribute them. We've started this already, both in Maleny and in Cairns and in the suburbs around Ryan, so the Gap and Indooroopilly, Toowong and those areas. And yeah, we want it to be really visible, particularly in those areas. We wanted this to really put pressure, not just on people who may be a Greens voter or may not be, but actually in areas where you've got even moderate Liberals, such as Ryan, such as Brisbane, where there's really strong concerns around this, so that we're trying to build basically a bipartisan consensus that we need stronger action on climate. And then again, we're trying to use the QR codes as a model so that if people want to know more, their curiosity leads them to get out their phone, and then from there they can order a sign themselves. So we've got a bunch of different signs. We've got call flutes, diamond and landscape. We've got wheelie bin stickers. We've got bump bar stickers. We have a Facebook overlay that people can utilize. If you go to QCC's website, Facebook page, you can find that. Together, have got your union has done up a workplace poster, and then we've got leaflets and explainers. And we're building up community energy in terms of how we distribute that. The ways that we're experimenting with at the moment in terms of distributing them is we've got volunteers who volunteer for QCC in the Ryan area who will drop them off to people. We also encouraging people, if they register for a sign, to come and pick them up. So either people have got them at their house and they say, you know, come to my back steps and you pick them up. We're really keen to get a bunch of more local cafes or community centres or churches where people can collect them. At the moment, Indooroopilly Anglican Church has got the signs and is willing for people to come and pick them up, but we're trying to get a bunch more of them. And then we really want to get to the point where once people have said they've got one, they're like, oh, and I'm going to chat to my neighbours about it. So I've done that in my street, and not everyone's put up a sign. You know, some of the older guys haven't, but At least half of my street has. And then we want to also, once we're beginning to build momentum, if people want to do more, we'll be going out and door knocking. I've done some door knocking in Toowong, and I spoke to 8 households and 6 of them said yes, and we put up signs then and there. So it was a really high uptake. We're also distributing them at markets, at stalls, at rallies, at other places. But the one thing that we're really keen to do is we don't just want to hand out a sign and say that's it. We want to get people's connections so that we can mark where they are, their address and their details, so we can mark where they are on the map, but also so we can follow up with people and encourage them to post something on Facebook or distribute more and that kind of thing. So it's very much a grassroots organising model, building out of people's just concern that we've got to do something. We've got to build some energy. We've got to get things moving. And what I hope is that before the federal election, no state or federal politician can drive anywhere around, particularly the inner cities, inner suburbs of Southeast Queensland, of Brisbane, and not see these signs everywhere. Because then that's, I think, what really gets the politicians worried that there's a groundswell occurring and that they need to move so that they're not going to face, the anger that I know I feel about the lack of action that we're seeing on climate. So that's really the quick presentation that I wanted to run through, Alex. Kat, I don't know if there's anything that you want to add in there.
Not really. I think, what I really love about this is that it's really easy. You're not asking people to do really anything other than host a sign. So obviously there's different levels of engagement, and so it doesn't matter where you sit or how engaged you are, anyone can participate, but then obviously we can increase that participation then too if that person wants, and hopefully we can roll it out across Queensland before the federal election. That would be awesome, so that they're everywhere and that they're completely unavoidable. And that would be great, because I think politicians fear the polling booths more so than anything else. So I think this is good.
Great. No, thank you, Kat. And just a quick update on what we've done so far. We've got 4,500 signs out to groups. We've got 412 requests. We have a fortnightly working group. We've got 30 places in Ryan where people can pick up from houses. We've been distributing at the strikes, and we're doing it at stalls in that area. So I guess the asks that I have for you in terms of getting involved is there's 4 things. There's 4 things that you could do. I think we're going to poll on 3 of them today, later on. But the first one is, will you take a sign? The second is, will you put it together? And sorry, that should be capitalized. Sign up in your workplace. Will you help distribute? And then obviously, if you want to get more involved, you can always volunteer with QCC. But listen, that's enough for my presentation, Alex. I might stop sharing screen and we can see if people have questions or things they want to ask. Is that all right?
If there's any, I think we've got a reasonably large group on today, but if there's people who've got questions, you either pop them in the chat and we can respond, or it's probably the easiest way to manage it. Do people have any questions they'd like Dave to talk about? While we're giving people time to type, I think from Together's point of view, we think this is a really important campaign. I mean, our commitment has generally been in relation to climate over a number of years, but I think, like many people, I was particularly frightened by the IPCC report and what that really putting it into a real context about what it means for my children and what it looks like. But kind of as a scene setter post-COVID, like I think we're all very focused on COVID and what it meant to us and our families and our communities over the last couple of years, and climate had drifted a bit out of the agenda. But the IPCC report and what that means in terms of the scale of change is truly frightening. But speaking to a lot of Together members and delegates, I think I also shared a sense of disillusionment and potentially disempowerment about everybody that we were speaking to was deeply concerned, but not quite sure about how to make a difference. And while we'd seen campaigns in the past, after the last election, and looking at the kind of debates about where we're at, and looking at Sky News and the Courier Mail, I was concerned about how do we give a real voice for the future and give us an opportunity to force change from politicians who want to talk about anything but long-term solutions to what are very significant challenges facing humanity and community. So that's why we were so impressed by what the QCC was doing, and really think it was a great opportunity to start the debate again, to start trying to drive to the politicians that the middle ground does care about climate, even if there's debates about what the strategies might look like, making it clear that Queenslanders care about climate, Queenslanders care about our future, our children's future, but giving an opportunity of making that debate, making our voice really heard in this process, and working with QCC, who've got such a great track record of campaigning and delivering real pressure onto politicians, was a unique opportunity for us. And so in our conversations with Dave and the QCC, we were keen to look at targeting, particularly Ryan and a couple of the Southeast Queensland seats, but also working with QCC about what we can do in terms of providing a workplace presence for this debate as well. So we can provide an opportunity where the majority can come up and say, climate is real, climate change is real, and we care about it and we want something to be done. And then the debate comes about what we should be doing, as opposed to whether we should be doing anything at all. So that's why we think this is such a great opportunity. We think it's a well thought through campaign. It doesn't get distracted in terms of the arguments about specific issues, but provides a platform for that debate to occur, but also provides an opportunity, particularly for people in Ryan and the southeast corner, to make sure that the debate is about the future, it is about climate, it is about the science. So that's why we're asking people a range of questions today. And this will be part of an ongoing process. And the first of those is about the willingness for people to get involved. We know it's not straightforward, but we think this is a simple ask in relation to climate, but also being able to then, this isn't a complete campaign, but I think there are a few questions on the chat, Dave, that you might be able to.
Yeah, there's one from Beck. Hey, Beck. So yes, we have stickers. We have wheelie bin stickers, which are A3, and we have bumper bar stickers. There was some discussion around some kind of workplace sticker. We haven't printed any of them off, but we're really open to doing new things. So at the moment, it's wheelie bin stickers and bumper bar stickers.
There's another question from Jason as well.
About whether it's going to cut through. Yeah. Listen, I think the thing that, I guess the part of the theory behind this is climate change has become a little bit, particularly because of the Murdoch media domination, something that it's almost like politics and religion, like you don't talk about it at the dinner table, or you don't talk about it with extended relatives because it leads to fights. And so what we're trying to do is normalize attitudes by making people realize that their neighbours are concerned about it as well. So, and there's actually some interesting psychological research that shows if you realise that a value is shared across your community, you're more likely to be courageous in terms of speaking about it and taking action on it. So that's one of the things that we think that will help. Because yeah, you're right, we live in an echo chamber that doesn't get our messages out. And so this is part of our way of trying to change it.
Just on that, Dave, I think the other point is that at some point the debate is going to get settled. The question is whether the debate gets settled before it's too late. That we know that the science is real and that climate change is happening, and there's going to be disastrous impacts in terms of what's going to mean for our families, for the community, for industry, for everything. The question is whether we can get the debate started early enough to avoid that. That's right. Because if our children or grandchildren are having this debate, it's far too late. We need to take action now. This campaign may not succeed. What we've known in the past is the last 10, 15 years of the climate debate hasn't been successful in normalising this process. So that's why we think this is a great campaign, because it is doing something different. Because if we keep on trying the same thing again and again, we'll get the same failures. But we also know that we've got to try something, that not campaigning to try and save the planet isn't an option for us. So in terms of this process, the other question that we were asking people was about whether they're willing to distribute signs, and also, which we're asking, so not only putting up a sign, but also whether you're willing to help distribute other signs as a higher level engagement. And we'll also be asking people at the end of the day whether they're willing to put up a workplace poster. We had the conversation about stickers with Dave. Our preference was posters initially, because we didn't want stickers going up that then caused in places that were then getting a pushback from the employer to say, you can't put stickers here, you can't put stickers there. Posters, we think, are giving our greater capacity for union notice boards and other things to get the message out to normalise it. and so therefore stickers we think are good for bins, but just in the workplace we felt that there was a problem that people might start pushing back against stickers from an employer point of view, and that would mean pushing back against posters and all things on people's desks. So that was more of a tactical choice, but we were really keen to make sure that if you put up a poster and you've got a problem with it, you can take it down again. If you put up a sticker, it's harder to take down. So that was really just my preference with talking to Dave around that, and working that process through. So that was really where we were at with that. And then kind of working through what is the next part of that process. So
there's a couple of questions in the chat about from Dan, and then a comment from Janelle. Can you see those, Dave?
Yeah, so I guess I think we can have longer discussions around what is happening in terms of the discourse between the science and the politics. I think the challenge we face is building people power. The science is clear, and I think to shift the politics, I mean, there's some economic functions, but actually the economics is shifting. Increasingly, capital is moving in some ways faster than some of the politics is. Not all of it, obviously, there's your big oil majors and others, but I think it's really, the question is, how do we build people power that really makes people sense that things are changing, particularly in Queensland? And yeah, I agree with Janelle's comment that it feels too big. And so this is a simple bite-sized action that people can take. It's something they can do. It's long lasting. It doesn't take a lot of effort. When we go out door knocking, we have pull ties. And so we can just put things up then and there without having impact on people's properties. And it's really quick and easy.
Can I just jump in too? I think too that for a long time the narrative has been a lot of the big companies have been shifting the focus onto individual action, so composting and recycle and try to drive an EV and get solar, and all of that stuff helps. And individual action is obviously a part of it, but at least this individual action is public in a way. People can see it, it makes an impact, and it's actually calling on people. And then that stage too, like people might go, yep, I've got my sign, but they might be willing to do something else. They might then feel motivated to then lobby their politician or write to the school in their areas and make sure that they're going solar. So it's all, any action is good. And obviously this sign in conjunction with all the other stuff we're doing works. And it is, like QCC have got other campaigns at the moment too, like to get, to be 100% renewable by 2032 when we have the Olympics. So it's all tying in together, that it's not just one campaign. There's multiple groups across the climate spectrum and the environment spectrum in Queensland are working on this, and so it's great
working with us
unions
together.
are coming board. And the more that we get, that then eventually it's like when everyone's pushing for it, it's going to happen anyway. And we see that when corporates make the move, the market does it, and then the public, the government sort of get left behind and have to play catch up. So it all helps.
Yeah, good point.
I think also from Together's point of view, this campaign is a component of a broader campaign around climate. We're working with UCC and other groups to also educate processes and doing similar webinars to this about what the science actually looks like. But today was really looking at people who already understand the science and are committed to action about how we can do to make real action occur through this process. But we also recognise that if we're going to have this conversation moving forward, both in the IPCC report and some of the international conversations that are going to happen over the next 6 to 12 months. This is something that we need to be talking not only to the people who understand the science and are committed to action, but also talking to our members in relation to giving them access to the information to understand what the report looks like in a way that isn't so scary that they give up and hide from the issue. Because I think that's the real challenge with some of our members, is that they accept the science, but it's that they can't see a hope for real action to make a difference. And I think the only way we are going to win real action on climate change, we can't just rely on the markets, we can't just rely on big business. We need workers and we need the community to have a voice in this. I think the challenge for us as union leaders and as workplace leaders is about trying to make sure that people understand their power and that they can make a difference, because I think Murdoch's strategy is to make it so difficult and so intimidating that workers aren't heard on this and the community isn't heard on it. We can't guarantee success. We know that this might fail as a campaign, But from my point of view and from the branch executive's point of view is we've got to try, we've got to do what we can. This is an element of it. Education is an element of it, and working with other groups as part of this process, because while we are a trade union trying to improve members' working lives, climate affects our lives, it affects our community, and it affects our children. And that's why we're invested in terms of trying to do all we can to not only educate people, but also to give people an opportunity to be involved in something that can make fundamental and real difference. And hopefully this is it. If this fails, we will keep on campaigning about climate no matter what, because certainly for my lifetime and other people's lifetime, it's going to be an issue. I don't think we're going to solve it. It's going to be about how quickly and how fast we act. So this isn't perfect, but we think it's the best campaign we've seen so far, and it's certainly different. But it is also, we'll be asking you to do this, be involved in the QCC campaign, but also we're together and other QCC campaigns are involved, thinking about other ways, in particular incidents where we can put maximum pressure on the politicians in the lead up to the various international treaties and discussions. So this isn't, I think what we're saying is we believe climate change is real. We still believe we have a chance to make a difference. But this is part of that process of making a difference, and that's about influencing politicians, but there's a range of other things we'll be asking you to do. But we've got to start having this conversation again. We are going through a pandemic. There are huge challenges in a range of our workplaces, in a range of our communities, and they are short-term and they are real. But climate is the largest challenge we're facing with over the next 50 years. And if we don't do something, we can't leave this for future generations because it's not reversible, and real action is required now, which is why we're doing all we can to reach out to our members, but we're also keen to work with members and workplace delegates to try and work out how we can reach out to the broader community. And this might not work, but we've got to do something in my view, and I think this is an opportunity to work with the great work with QCC to be able to try and be involved in it, and also hopefully continue to do similar webinars. This one's reasonably targeted in terms of we're only targeting a certain electorates in today's webinar, which is why we didn't want to overreach in terms of the initial process, and we're looking at taking this to the broader membership.
That's right.
And with larger webinars. But please be involved. We'll ask you after today to be involved in this campaign, but also feedback about how you think we could do things differently. But certainly from my perspective, inaction isn't an option. It's a matter of whether we're willing to do something to try and at least have a chance of making a difference rather than just watching the world burn, literally.
Right. So I think the next steps for people who've asked for signs is we'll be in contact about how to get them to you. But thank you so much to Alex and for everyone for having us here today.
Thanks, everybody. And as I say, if you've got other questions, there'll be a follow-up email out of today, which we'll either answer ourselves or forward to the QCC. But yeah, please take the time. I know everybody's busy and we ask a lot of you, but this is something that really does need, we need to change the paradigm, and we need to start this process. And I think this is a great campaign, which has a real opportunity to make a big difference. Thanks, everybody. And we'll try and wrap it up there. But if you have any other questions, please respond to that when we go a follow-up email, probably sometime this afternoon. And thanks for Dave and Kat for joining us and giving us a great presentation.
Our pleasure.